Hello, my name is Ralf Pirzl. I have been involved in business and politics for many years. And today I want to address a question many people are asking. Why is Vladimir Putin not ending the war in Ukraine? Because at first glance, it seems obvious. If one man holds decisive power in Russia, then in theory he could stop the war. So why doesn't he? Let's start by looking at the official explanations. And more importantly, let's ask whether they fully explain what is happening. One argument from Moscow is that military objectives have not yet been achieved. This includes goals related to control over territories like Donetsk and Luhansk from a purely geographic perspective. Some might argue that additional territory does not fundamentally change Russia's size or resources. But wars are rarely about size alone. They are about control, influence, and strategic positioning. Still, this explanation does not fully answer the question. Another argument often presented is the protection of Russian-speaking populations. This has been a central narrative, but critics question whether the scale and cost of the war align with that objective, because modern warfare brings heavy losses, and those losses raise difficult questions about priorities and decision-making. A third justification was to push back against NATO expansion. However, the outcome has been complex. Since the invasion, NATO has expanded, defense spending across Europe has increased, and coordination between Western countries has strengthened. So again, this raises doubts about whether this objective has been achieved. There is also the idea that the war benefits Russia economically. But this is highly debated. Russia has faced extensive sanctions. Trade has been restricted, and parts of the economy have been under pressure. At the same time, the military sector has grown. But growth in one sector does not compensate for broader economic challenges. So if these explanations are incomplete, we need to look deeper. Because wars are not only about external goals, they are also about internal dynamics, political stability, power structures, and personal risk. Ending a war is not just a military decision, it is a political one. If the war ends without a clear and defensible outcome, that creates risk. Risk for leadership, risk for credibility, risk for internal stability, because once a war begins, expectations are created, narratives are built, and those narratives must be managed. If a conflict ends without meeting those expectations, questions follow. From the public, from elites, from within the system itself, and in highly centralized systems, those questions can become dangerous. So the decision is not simply, can the war be stopped? The real question is, what happens after it stops? Because the aftermath can be more unpredictable than the war itself. Now let's look at another factor, momentum. Once a large-scale conflict is underway, it develops its own logic. Military planning, resource allocation, political messaging, all of this creates inertia, and inertia is hard to reverse, especially without a clear alternative. So what would it take to end the war? Most analysts agree on one thing. There needs to be a path, a way to stop without triggering instability. In diplomatic terms, this is often called an off-ramp, a solution that allows all sides to move away from conflict without appearing to lose completely. But what does that actually mean in practice? Let's explore the realistic options. First, there is the possibility of a negotiated settlement, direct or indirect talks between Russia and Ukraine, often supported by international actors. But here is the challenge. Both sides still believe they can improve their position, and as long as that belief exists, negotiations remain weak, because compromise feels like losing. Now consider a second option. A frozen conflict, not peace, but a pause. Fighting decreases, but no final agreement is reached. This has happened in other regions before. It allows both sides to step back without officially conceding defeat. But it also creates long-term instability, and the risk of future escalation remains. A third factor is pressure, sanctions, military support, economic isolation. The goal is simple: increase the cost of continuing the war until stopping becomes the better option. But pressure alone is not enough, because pressure without a solution creates resistance, not compromise, which brings us back to the most important element, the off-ramp, a political exit, a way to step away from the war without public humiliation, because in geopolitics, saving face is essential. Without it, leaders may continue fighting, even when the cost becomes unsustainable. So any real solution must combine three elements: pressure, negotiation, and a credible exit strategy. Not perfect, but realistic. Now let's come back to the central question. Is the war continuing because it cannot be stopped, or because stopping it carries risks of its own? The answer is probably both. And that is what makes this conflict so difficult, because ending a war is often harder than starting one. If you want to understand global politics without noise, subscribe to Nexopol and tell me in the comments, what do you think matters more in war? Military results or political survival?